I'm Jack Plunkett. We're going to talk about Chapter 3 of the next boom, Global Trade 2.0. Now, how will trade change under Global Trade 2.0? How will trade be different in the near future? To begin with, it's going to be much more focused on services than it has in the past. Next, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on regional trade and regional trade agreements. In fact, in the last 15 years, there's been a dramatic acceleration in acknowledged regional trade agreements. So nations, to a growing extent, are looking to their neighbors and building close regional ties for trade, something in which the United States has been falling behind a bit, in all honesty, while Asia has been accelerating. For instance, we're going to see very rapidly growing trade ties between Japan and China and the rest of its neighbors to an accelerating extent. Europe has an outstanding opportunity to build new regional trade agreements with rapidly growing economies in Africa and in Eastern Europe, former Soviet bloc countries. The United States has tremendous opportunities to build new regional trade agreements within Latin America, especially with rapidly growing nations and rapidly growing communities in Brazil, Argentina, and other South American countries that are really posting potentially very stunning growth over the near future. Meanwhile, the challenge for mature economies like those of the United States, Canada, Germany, France, the UK, the challenge for such nations is to remain highly competitive and highly innovative and build on their very strong bases of intellectual property, powerful education bases, strong financial communities, and make sure that they have a very, very powerful and growing list of products and services that emerging nations will absolutely want to buy in massive quantity. Meanwhile, workers in countries like India and China are demanding more and more. They realize how important they are to the marketplace in those countries and to the business system in those countries, and they're continuing to demand higher and higher and higher wages and benefits. At some point, the cost advantage that these emerging nations have will erode significantly, particularly in China and India. And the lowest value work and the lowest productivity work will be passed on to other nations with low costs. So we'll see things leaving China and being manufactured instead in lower cost places like Vietnam, Cambodia, and many nations in Africa over the near future. Meanwhile, China will go to higher value manufacturing. China will be making more things that are technology based in aerospace, transportation equipment, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment. For instance, we'll see the Chinese become extremely competitive in healthcare products and medical equipment in the same way they've taken over a huge share of the world marketplace in telecommunications equipment. China and India are somewhat similar to other nations in Asia right after World War II, where Japan, Singapore, Korea, Taiwan grew rapidly over a 30 to 50 year period, becoming true economic powerhouses with very high household income, very high educational achievement, and very big manufacturing, services, and trade bases. China's on the same path. India's on a very similar path, but doing it in a slightly different way with more emphasis on services than manufacturing. In all, the growth of China and India and the point where they are today remind me a little bit of what America did from 1860 through the beginning of the Great Depression. So from the 1860s up to about 1930, America became less of a frontier and more of a truly emerged and global spanning economy. So for the next boom in the near future, think of very rapid growth in global trade. Thinking of a new emphasis on services in global trade. There will be great opportunities for the United States and Europe, provided they remain innovative, they remain competitive, and take advantage of their own core strengths to build in this rapidly growing global trade arena. Thanks. I will see you in Chapter 4 for more on global trade and the rising global middle class.